Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Our question here is, in the key of C, how does this chord function? What's written from low to high is this. The low note's an A flat, then we've got C in the middle. On top, we have an F sharp. Together, we get this sound, and that's the chord that's written. It's pretty dissonant, right? So how would this function in the key of C? This is a tricky one. We usually don't have sharps or flats in the key of C, and in this particular chord, we've got a flat and a sharp, right? So what's going on? Well, this is an augmented 6th chord. And let me explain a little bit about what's going on. This chord is typically used to set up the dominant, to move to the dominant chord, which in this case, in the key of C, we'd be moving to a G chord, okay? And so here's what happens. The reason it's called an augmented 6th chord is because we have a flat in the bass, and then the top note, F sharp, that's interval, that distance there is an augmented 6, and that's where the name comes from, okay? Now, if you do your typical thing and you try to label the notes in stack ascending thirds, we would have to label this chord as some type of F sharp chord, because F sharp would be the root, A flat in this case would be the third of the chord, and then the C would be the fifth of the chord. The only problem with this in trying to analyze it as a typical major, minor, or even augmented or diminished chord, it doesn't fit into any of those categories because F sharp up to A flat is a diminished third, okay? So what you can take away from this particular video is if you're ever looking at any kind of passage and you have some kind of chord and you get a diminished third, you are going to have some kind of augmented 6th chord. It's going to be one of these types. Now, there are different types. There's Italian augmented 6th. That's what I have here. There's French and German augmented 6th. The names are kind of weird. I don't think they're really connected with a geographic location historically, but we've had these names for a long time and we still use them. So don't get too tied up with the names. Just know that if you find any kind of chord and you have a diminished third in it, you're going to have one of these, okay? Now, the way it works in terms of voice leading, the A flat would move down to G, and the F sharp would move up to G. And so then you get octave Gs, and then the C could go up to a D, or it could go down to a B, and you're going to get a dominant triad, and then you're going to go typically to the 1 chord, okay? The last thing I want to say about it is the way these chords can function, depending on how they're spelled, you can do a number of different things. So it gets a little bit tricky. If you look at this chord the way it's spelled right now, some of you guys might say, well, hey, if I label the F sharp instead as a G flat, then I would have A flat, C, and then a G flat. Well, that's kind of an implied A flat dominant 7 chord, right? We're missing the E flat here. And so, hey, I think this is an A flat dominant 7 chord. It's just we're missing the E flat. We're missing the fifth of the chord. And that would imply that we're going to move then to D flat, okay? Like a D flat thing happening next. Okay, this is possible, and this is maybe one of the ways a composer might play around with the harmony and change keys or introduce more color into the piece. But the way it's spelled with the F sharp, this has to be this guy here, augmented 6th chord, okay? So I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little bit convoluted and tricky. Feel free to leave me a comment or a question, and I'll maybe dig into these chords a little bit more because they're interesting, and there's a lot of cool things you can do with them. All right, that's it for now. I'll see you next time.